Guys, happy Friday. Happy Friday, man. I got bad audio and a bad camera today, but I'm not going to let it slow me down, right? So, hey, today we're going to get into, are we in a recession? Okay? And more importantly, what does that mean to a home seller? That's a big question right now that we're getting from a lot of people. I want to make sure everybody's got the answer. And I'm going to give you a lot of facts. I'm going to give you my opinion. And then if you guys have any questions, any comments, anything, whether you're watching on Facebook or if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to punch them in down below. Or if it's afterwards, you can send me a DM and I'll always get back to you with answers, right? But really, are we in a recession? The simple answer is yes. If you look at the definition of recession, you can see that it is 2 consecutive quarters of receding GDP. We've had that, and so we're in a recession. Now, recession is a scary word for anybody who doesn't know the true definition of it. Are we in an area in our time where I personally am overly scared? No, this is not, in my opinion, anything like 2008, which in all honesty was a scary time. There were some scary things going on, and that's not a time that I would want to replicate again. I am not anywhere near that position right now, even though we're literally in a recession. Are we in quite the financial height, the economic height we were in maybe 2-3 years ago? And we saw that absolutely wonderful time of just everybody flourishing, everybody kicking butt. No, we're not. It's absolutely slowing for a lot of businesses, depending upon your industry. You might have seen a little bit of impact, but it's nothing like 2008. It's just incredibly different. But I do want to show you some stats from the real estate standpoint, and I want to show you some Port St. Lucie stats specifically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here. Let's get into share screen. And there we go. So you guys should be able to see my screen now, and I'm hopping over to the MLS now, all right? So these are all Port St. Lucie statistics. I just want to look at some of these things so you can see kind of where the numbers are and how they've been moving. This goes out for the last 12 months, and it goes out until June because July is not over, so we don't have July numbers yet. But what is the absorption rate? The absorption rate is, let's say we've got 500 homes for sale in Port St. Lucie, and we're selling 500 homes every 30 days. The absorption rate is 1 month because it takes 1 month to absorb all those homes at the current rate we're purchasing homes or selling homes, right? If the 500 homes are on the market and it's the current market's selling 250 homes, we've got 2 months as an absorption rate, right? It's going to take 2 months for us to sell those properties. So looking at this, you can see that from January no, that's not right. From July to January, it kind of went from a month, and then up here around November, it got up to maybe 1.3 months. Oh, it says 1.27. And then in January of this year, it came down to 1 month, right? That was kind of the low point that we had. And then it kind of remained steady. And then in March, it started shooting up, right? It was at 1.05 months. In April, it was at 1.14 months. In March, it was 1.38. In June, it was 1.7. And I'll tell you, even though we don't have final July numbers, everything I'm looking at says it's going to be a little over 2 months, right? So we're seeing that number increasingly go up. And it's not something that's happened over a month or two, because you can see there's been other months where it goes up and it wasn't really a big deal. But this is a trend that I perceive is going to continue on, right? So let's keep looking. Inventory for the city of Port St. Lucie. Inventory is how many homes are for sale. I'm sorry. It's how many are for sale is right here. So you can see that back in July, there were 600 homes. Now, this is everything, right? This isn't just single-family homes. You've also got condos, townhouses. If you've got residential lots, modular homes, everything like that. And you can see that they came up. And then October, November, they kind of peaked out. And then it came down again in January. Because everything was selling. But now you can see that inventory is continuing to go up, okay? Now, let's look at the inventory of sold listings, because a lot of people say, holy smokes, the real estate market's tanking. And it's not, right? What's happening is when you look at sold listings, back here in July, you can see we were at 650, 545, 585, 555, 581, 637, 470. It dipped right there. 517, and then it came back up to 662, 636, 614, 597. It's remained pretty doggone steady for the last year. So the reason we've got so many more homes for sale right now than we had a year ago isn't because buyers aren't buying. They're buying at roughly the same rate they've always been buying. The big difference now is that there's so many more listings coming on than buyers buying. But buyers are still buying. It's just the fact that so many more listings are coming on. You can see right here, they kind of remain steady, and then right here, they just started going up while sold listings remain the same. Okay, so buyers are still out there. It's just now you have to be competitive. Is it still a seller's market? I would say it's right on the fringe of being a seller's market and a neutral market, but we're starting to enter that phase of it being a neutral market. All right, now let's start to look at prices. And, you know, I never like to look at actives because those are wishes, right? And you never know what's truly going to sell. A lot of those are going to expire. Some will sell for less. So let's look at actual sold prices, right? The median price back in July was $314. By the first of the year, it had bumped up to $350. And now you're at $400. Okay. And I'll tell you, if you're looking at single family homes, it's even higher. Because remember, this includes condos and townhouses, right? So once you get into single family homes, from memory, you're right around 417, 418 as a median sales price. That's interesting to see. Here's sales to original list price. Why is this stat helpful? This stat is helpful because it tells you what the average sales price of a home is in comparison with its original asking price. And if you are, well, if you're a buyer, it tells you what are the odds of me coming in 20, 30 grand low and getting my offer accepted. This will tell you that. Do I have to come in 10, 20, 30 grand over to get a house anymore? This will tell you that. If you're a seller, right, where am I probably going to sell in comparison to my asking price? This will tell you. And I'll tell you, if you're way overpriced, you're not going to get what this says. You're going to get considerably less as a percentage. And if you're properly priced, you might actually get a little bit more than people get because a lot of people start by overpricing their home, right? So you can see back in July, I'm not Southern. I just keep saying June, and it turns into July because I start reading here. But you can see they were selling at 104%. I'm sorry, 100.4%. So just a hair over. Here was 100.3. Here was 100.4. Right in October, it was 99.99, dipped a little bit below, came back up, dipped down in January and February, came back up to 100% even. And then in April, it peaked out at 101%, right? So if you got a $400,000 home, it's selling for $404. If you got a $600,000 home, it's selling at $606. Now in March, it came back down to 100.4, and now in June, we're seeing 99.7. Everything I'm seeing for July is probably going to be around 99.6, 99.5. So you're going to see another small receding from that, right? Last one I want to look at is the sold days on market for the city of Port St. Lucie. If I put my home on market, how many days is it going to take for me to sell? And you can see it was at 17.1 in July. And then in January, it peaked out because you can see every other number shows us January was the weakest month in the last 12 months. It was at 24 days on average it took to sell. And now we're back at 16 days. But I'll tell you that 16.8 days is the average amount of days it takes to sell for a home that's selling. There are plenty of homes that are not selling. And for those homes, they're not attributing to those numbers, right? So then the question becomes, what's going to happen in the future? In the future, number one, we have no idea, right? You know what I love about Warren Buffett is he will admit that while he's often considered one of the best investors ever, he has no idea what a typical company is going to do for 6 to 12 months. He can guess pretty well what a conglomerate of companies will do over 10, 20 years, but 6 to 12 months, who knows, right? So I would say this, looking at the trends and where they're going, one of two things is probably going to happen. Either this trend is going to continue and it's going to become a neutral market. It'll stay a neutral market for maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe 12 months. And if the trend continues, eventually it'll be a buyer's market. My thought process, but I'm also biased. I'm a realtor. So take this with a grain of salt. Is what I'm saying accurate, or is it because I'm biased? There are a lot of sellers who wanted to wait for the peak before they put their homes in the market. Well, we had seen the peak. Everybody saw it. And once we saw that peak and it had passed us, all of a sudden I started getting phone calls from sellers wanting to put their homes on the market. Now, that is a specific group of people, a specific number of people who are going to want to put their homes on the market, right? So when I look at that, I wonder, was that increase all of those people who wanted to wait for the peak and now they've seen the peak and so now they're good? Or is this a trend that's going to continue? Now, you're going to see buyers saying, no, this is a trend that's going to continue, right? Because they're biased too, just like me as a realtor. You're going to see sellers saying, no, what you're saying makes sense, Joe. It was a group of sellers. They all came on. It went up a little bit. And now it's probably going to plateau. But I truly don't know. I don't know. And neither do any of your friends. So if they tell you they know, they don't know. Nobody knows. But I will say it's interesting to think about. And I'll say this too. If you're a buyer, and you want to purchase a home and stay there for 10 plus years, buy the house. Buy the house. Rates are lower than the 50-year average right now by at least a percentage. Depending upon the day, it might be 2 points. Are they higher than they were a year ago? Yes. But consider the fact that maybe we were spoiled. And I've got one of those spoiled rates. So listen, I get it and I'm appreciative. But we might be spoiled, right? So if you look at the worst time ever for a buyer to buy, from memory, it was September of 2007. I think that was the peak of the market. That would have been the highest point for you to purchase in the United States of America. And if you looked at the next 10 years, you would think, oh, you had to take that absolute trouncing in 08 and 09. And the market just sucked for years. But guess what? 10 years later, and it's not even 10 years later, it's like 6 or 7 years later, you would have broken even and started making money on your house. And that's not assuming all of the mortgage pay down you're making. That's only assuming the price itself, the value itself, right? If you and I, in the worst of times, one of us rents and one of us buys, and my price comes back up to where I finally purchased it for 6 years later, you might say, well, you broke even. You made payments and I made payments. Your house is worth what you bought it for. We're both in the same boat, but it's not true. Because even though I bought my home for, let's say, 400 grand and I can sell it for 400 grand, I have a mortgage that maybe I only owe 320 on. So I've got $80,000 of equity. I'm making that up, but you've got some amount of equity. If you're a renter, you have nothing, right? And that rent can go up over time. That rent is not going to stay the same. Whereas with a mortgage, your interest rate and your principal, unless you're on an adjustable rate mortgage, but most people aren't, your interest rate and your principal are going to stay exactly the same. So yeah, you've got insurance going up, and yeah, you've got taxes going up. But guess what happens on a rental when I'm the landlord and the taxes and insurance go up? I'm going to pass that on to my renter, right? Because I've got to cover the costs. If I can't make a profit, why would I rent this thing out? So rent is going to continuously go up, while a house payment goes up at a much smaller rate per year. So if you're going to buy long-term, I think it absolutely makes sense. And I would also look into, a lot of people are trying to play that gambling game of, do I jump in the market now? Do I wait? And I would say this, the odds that you are going to successfully time the market are very small. Even if the market drops and you say, yes, I waited for that great price and I got it, the rates could be a point or two higher. Would it have been worth it if your payment is the same or maybe even higher with a lower price, right? Now, I'm not saying do it or don't do it. What I'm saying is don't allow your emotions, right, the fear of higher prices right now to hold you back. Actually look at it as unbiased and objectively as possible. And if you're a seller and you're in a position where there's a strong motivation to sell because that next journey, that next plan has some sort of value to you and or your family, then do it. Prices are probably, in my opinion, this is one guy's guess, I'm guessing prices are going to plateau for the next 6 months. If anything, they might come down 1% or 2%. I don't think they're going to plummet and come down 8, 10, 12% or more, but they could come down 1% or 2%, right? So if you're going to sell, why not sell now? The odds that prices go up in the next 6 months, I mean, they're possible. But if they do, it's not going to be, I don't know that either. I should never claim to know anything. I think the likelihood of it going up 10%, 20% in the next 6 months, like it has over the last 2-3 years, is incredibly low. So really, what I see day to day in these calls with buyers and sellers is a lot of second guessing, a lot of nervousness and anxiety, and just looking at the fear and letting the fear dictate what you do. But really, I would have a conversation with your financial advisor, with your accountant, with your realtor to really understand, is that move the move that works best for me, regardless of the situation we're in? If I'm going to commit as a buyer to living there for 8, 10, 12 years, does it really matter when I buy? Because every market, even the worst market we've ever seen, goes up over time, right? So if you can look at and consider all those things, you can make a solid decision. But as far as a recession is concerned, we're absolutely unquestionably in a recession. To me, no, it's not scary. And it's not because I'm some tough guy. It's because we have recessions all the time. I think it's every 6 years on average. We have, by definition, a recession. This has been the longest period we've ever had without one, which is phenomenal. We've had a great run here, but now we're going to have one. But don't forget, the average recession lasts 14 months. Is that really that big of a deal, right? It's going to suck. I'm not taking away from that, but we can get through anything, right? And if it's only 14 months, it's not a big deal. So just remember all those different things. And again, the biggest thing, if you're taking anything away from this video, is if you're trying to make a decision, you need to reach out to some people you trust, your financial advisor, your accountant, your realtor, and have a discussion about your options so they can put numbers to ideas. And now you can make an objective decision instead of a subjective decision. Guys, have an absolutely fired up Friday, and please enjoy your weekend. Take care.